welcome back to the Drunk on Writing Tarantino Dissections, brought to you in part through the patronage of Ariya Norinth. In this fun little, somewhat of an interim episode, we're taking a look at the many projects Quentin Tarantino did between his student film, My Best Friend's Birthday, which we talked about last time, and his official sort of directorial debut, Reservoir Dogs, which we'll talk about next time. Make sense? Because while it might be nice to think that you can go directly from this to that, there are in fact many points between. Before we go further, remember that you can always get more episodes more often over at drunkonwriting.com, where you can also get special behind the scenes episodes, exclusive access to the monthly video club, and a whole bunch more. You're going to like it if you sign up. I'm just going to say that. Now, I mentioned last time that Quentin Tarantino was, at this point, and probably still is, an aspiring actor. In fact, he pretty much wrote his screenplays to put himself in the films so that he could use it as sort of a sizzle reel of sorts, his portfolio, his acting portfolio. But if you've ever seen him actually act, you probably notice that he's honestly not that great at it. It's just not his forte. But that didn't keep him from trying, and after many unsuccessful tryouts, he eventually landed a role as an Elvis impersonator on The Golden Girls, the November 19th, 1988 episode Sophia's Wedding, Part 1 to be exact. You can see him in the back there, kind of flailing his arms around while singing along to a Hawaiian wedding song. This might seem a bit part to you, but Tarantino is actually pretty proud to play the hillbilly cat Elvis, as he put it, since, as he said in a 1994 Playboy interview, it was one of the few times that he actually got hired for a job. And let's be honest, he should have quit while he was ahead. I mean, how do you do better than the Golden Girls? Seriously. I should probably stop this video now before I say something that insults someone or something. Anyway, he'd also put in an appearance in Laura Lovelace's sole directorial credit, Vegetables. You probably don't know Lovelace, but she'd later appear as a waitress in both Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown. And that's it. This film's actually a bit more mysterious than most other Tarantino works, and I could not find a copy to watch. It's very interesting. Some people say it was anywhere from a half hour long to an hour and a half long, and that it was either a horror movie or something of a tribute to trash movies, which is another word for exploitation films. I don't know. Maybe I'll see it one day. Not going to hold my breath on that one. And though it wouldn't be released until 1994, Tarantino also recorded a vocal cameo as radio DJ Panhandle Slim around 1991 or so for the 35-minute black and white film The Coriolis Effect, described on its DVD box as a story about sex, love, and severe weather. It was written and directed by little-known Louis Venosta, maybe. I don't know. One of the others. That silent S sometimes gets very tricky in English. And it won the grand prize for short films at the Venice Film Festival in 1994, and seems to be a retelling of sorts of The Wizard of Oz. Now, you can watch that if you want to pay for it on Amazon Prime, but honestly, for me, a YouTube clip was kind of enough.
She told you? God, that is just like a woman. I can't believe she told you. She definitely told me, Stanley. Why? Did she say why she told you? The question isn't why she told me, Stanley. The question is why you f***ed her in the first place.
But none of these would have put Tarantino on the map, or given him much more than a random IMDb credit or tiny little bit of footnote. What did, however, were those screenplays I mentioned. And to get the right background, we have to step back to the video archives again, because it was while Tarantino worked there that his first few movies were born. Interestingly, not by him, but by fellow employee and eventual director of his own right, Roger Avary, who you might remember had a cinematographer credit on My Best Friend's Birthday. Now, Avary had written an 80-page treatment or so, sort of a screenplay, that he called The Open Road, which was about, as he put it on his website later, the odd couple relationship between an upright businessman and an out-of-control hitchhiker who travel into a hellish Midwestern town together. Story goes Avery showed this to Tarantino, who asked if he could take it and finish it, add to it, embellish on it. And so Avery did. He let him do it. Tarantino went away, wrote, and came back with what is purported to be a stack of handwritten notes on napkins, on paper, on all sorts of different pages. And I gotta tell you, I've only seen one handwritten note from Tarantino, and God help the two of them trying to decipher all these things, because his writing was pretty atrocious. His handwriting was pretty atrocious and full of misspellings. It was really weird. But they took this, they edited it, they rewrote it, they parsed it down into this 500-page, likely unfilmable monster of a script. Where's that movie, you might ask? Where is this 500-page epic film, The Open Road? Well, it was never made. The screenplay has never even been published or publicly released as far as I know. However, parts of it have been made because The Open Road was dissected into other scripts. See, the final version of this script centered around a character that might sound familiar. One, Clarence, who, as he traveled across the country with his love Alabama, wrote a seemingly ultra-violent screenplay about alternate versions of themselves. And yes, if you have been paying any kind of attention here, those would be the fairly obvious origins for True Romance and Natural Born Killers, both of which were excised from this collaborative The Open Road, as were bits of several other later movies that we will talk about down the line. And now, while both Natural Born Killers and True Romance were released after Reservoir Dogs, they were both written and optioned before Reservoir Dogs was even filmed. Now, True Romance, for its part, the title, of course, a play on the classic romance comics, was directed by Tony Scott, released September 10th, 1993, and starred Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette, along with a smorgasbord of an insanely memorable ensemble cast with memorable moments from the likes of Christopher Walken, Gary Oldman, Dennis Hopper, Brad Pitt, James Gandolfini, Samuel L. Jackson, Chris Penn, Michael Rappaport, and more. Let me catch my breath for a second after that one, because that was a lot of people. Jeez, I mean, what a cast. Now, if you haven't seen True Romance, go fix that, because you absolutely should, because it is one of the best Tarantino films, even if it really isn't. And it follows Clarence Worley so straight ripped from My Best Friend's Birthday that he actually repeats that Elvis speech here, that infamous Elvis speech, making this seem very much like a sequel to that film, who falls for Call Girl Alabama and then tries to free her from her pimp, unleashing all sorts of hell, though mostly because he accidentally grabbed a suitcase full of cocaine. Remember, kids, if you ever find a suitcase full of cocaine, whether at a pimp's house or anywhere else, best to leave it alone. Generally, by the way, Tarantino's script went largely unaltered, though Scott did sort of change up the non-linearity of the original script and make it a bit less Tarantino-y, a bit more conventional, which actually ended up working out in Tarantino's favor because Pulp Fiction would so masterfully kind of explore the non-linearity idea and kind of lay the groundwork for later other films that would do the same. And wouldn't it have felt weird to have those two films seem so familiar? I mean, they both sound alike. I mean, Tarantino has a very obvious sort of sound to him, his dialogue. Wouldn't it have been weird if they both felt alike as well? If they both kind of explore this nonlinear storytelling? I mean, they both came out in the same year too. I mean, we obviously wouldn't look at Pulp Fiction the same if True Romance had explored the same ideas. But I digress. Now, the one big change to the script, I have to say, is in the ending. Because Scott shot two endings. One in which both Clarence and Alabama make it out alive, which is the one we get in the theatrical release, and one where they don't. Now, you can watch that one. It was filmed. You can watch it on the DVD release, even though it was never finished effects-wise, and I think it's probably on YouTube as well. And it was Tarantino's original ending. Personally, I don't think it really fits the movie, and neither did Scott, obviously, who, like I said, he shot both, decided which one he was going to have once it was edited and all out there, and he wanted them to get away because, as he said, he sort of fell in love with these characters and he wanted them to be happy. And eventually, once he'd seen the finished product, Tarantino agreed as well, because as he sort of framed it, Scott, his version of true romance, it almost has this fairy tale-like aesthetic, right? It's this fairy tale romance, and having it end on a dour note would not have seemed right to the film that was made, because while it may follow the same script, it's a very different kind of movie than what we would get from Tarantino. Tarantino actually makes an interesting point of this on his commentary track on the alternate ending, which you can watch on the DVD. He said, "With that kind of fairy tale aspect, I think he's right. It should have ended a little bit more like a fairy tale. They shouldn't have died. You can almost make the point that the movie hadn't earned a tragedy ending. Now, if I had made the movie, he would have died. It would have been the same script, but it would have been different. And in mine, I think it would have worked. But in his, no. In his, I think he was right. I think he was 100% right." But that fairy tale aesthetic that I mentioned, it also sort of plays into Natural Born Killers, which had a very different production history compared to True Romance. There's actually a great tell-all book about this. Killer Instinct: How Two Young Producers Took on Hollywood and Made the Most Controversial Film of the Decade, by James Hampshire, one of the film's producers, who's gone in some odd directions since. I read it, and, well, two things that immediately kind of stood out to me. One, producers are very much needed. Like, you kind of think about them, they're like, oh, these people are just kind of coming in and taking money or paying for money or doing stuff. They are absolutely necessary. They handhold creators who, to be frank, creators aren't the best in terms of business and handling paperwork. I hate paperwork. I can't stand all the administrative stuff. Producers do that for us. They help the creators create. It's very, very lovely. But two, the book really paints Tarantino as a bit of a scumbag. And now, the main reason I bring this up is because that is something that would be a recurring theme throughout his career. You'd hear it every so often, especially when you think about the people that he's been tied with throughout his career. He definitely has done some questionable things. Now, I'm not one to tend to color art with the actions of the artist. I mean, I still love Tom Cruise despite his nuttiness, so I guess I just let it be. I think the art should stand for itself. So while his collaborators' commentary in this book sort of colors Tarantino's career in a way that is pretty unflattering, for this series, we're going to mostly focus on the actual art, though I guess some of the artists will inevitably bleed through as needed. So enough tangent. Let's get back to Natural Born Killers. Natural Born Killers released August 26, 1994, just a few months ahead of Pulp Fiction's wide release. It was directed by Oliver Stone and starred, in the midst of Cheers, Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, on the verge of more legal troubles, Robert Downey Jr., Tom Sizemore, and Tommy Lee Jones, with, again, an incredibly memorable turn from Rodney Dangerfield, among others. Natural Born Killers is very different than True Romance, or really any of Tarantino's other films. Sure, the characters sort of talk like Tarantino wrote their lines, and until he shaves his head, Woody Harrelson's Mickey sure looks an awful lot like Tarantino, which is kind of pretty creepy if you think about it. But NBK is so different from Tarantino's original vision and his script that Tarantino actually literally disowned the movie. In fact, during production, he went so far as to tell Tim Roth and Steve Buscemi that if they accepted roles for this film, he would never cast them again in any of his future films. And they both turned down roles. It's kind of astonishing, kind of really saying something about his star power, but also his intimidation power. In the end, he wouldn't even accept a writing credit for the movie. He just got a story by. That's all he wanted. Back to Jane Hampshire's book, though. She believes much of this was because her and her partner, Don Murphy, optioned NBK for just $10,000. Remember, this is before Reservoir Dogs, so Tarantino was still a relative unknown. Now, fun fact here, Tarantino used the money to buy a 64 Chevy Malibu Super Sport convertible. Yes, the one you see John Travolta drive in Pulp Fiction. So he seemed like he was pretty happy with the deal at the time. But it was only after Reservoir Dogs came out that Natural Born Killers got any traction. So obviously the option was worth a good deal more. So when Tarantino inevitably came back to them and said, hey, I'll give you back the $10,000 in exchange for the film rights, it was kind of literally a slap in the face. And he was probably only doing it so he could resell the option at a higher price, or perhaps make the film himself, which I gotta say, I'm really rather glad he didn't, because while much of the movie can be sourced from Tarantino's original vision, which you can go ahead and read that, it's available, his original script, Oliver Stone, along with writers David Vloes and, to a rather lesser degree, Richard Rutowski, delivered a seminal film that easily surpasses what Tarantino put on the page. A lot of that is due to the incredible camera work. I'm fairly certain there isn't a non-Dutch angle to be seen, keeping it as trippy and uncomfortable as possible. The eclectic, almost dizzying editing, a profound use of color and the lack of it, and just some fun cinematography effects, like having silk screens in the background playing seemingly completely unrelated content to give sort of visual representation of the lead character's mental state. None of that was in Tarantino's screenplay, though, to his credit, it wasn't a completely straightforward film even there. But the Rodney Dangerfield sitcom segment where threats of incestual rape are echoed with canned laughter, or Tommy Lee Jones' character ending with his head on a pike, all of that was completely new and completely fabulous. I assume Tarantino could have only been offended that they took his script, which is much more slow, much more plotting, and much more focused on the character of Wayne Gale, who Tarantino actually wanted to play at some point. So I think it's safe to say Robert Downey Jr. knocked it straight out of the park. Well, focused on Wayne Gale and his production team, which were actually named after Tarantino's fellow employees at the Video Archives, and turn it into this non-stop acid trip of an anti-media roller coaster ride. Yes, I rather love the movie, and like True Romance, consider it one of the best of Tarantino's films, even though it's not really a Tarantino film. I actually had this long debate the other day about whether Natural Born Killers or Pulp Fiction is the better movie, and I have to say, I think if NBK came out first, history would be on my side there. But regardless, True Romance and Natural Born Killers helped put Tarantino on the map, especially after the release of Reservoir Dogs. Again, these released after his directorial debut. But there was another movie that truly brought Tarantino to the next level. Rather literally, in fact, as it was the cash from this that helped him quit the Video Archives, his job at the Video Archives back in 1990, to start writing and directing and acting full time, even though it wouldn't actually be released until 1996. That movie, From Dusk Till Dawn, also notable as George Clooney's first major film role. And did you know George Clooney also appeared on The Golden Girls? Anywho, Quentin Tarantino wrote the screenplay as his first work for hire based on a 24-page treatment written by Robert Kurtzman, not to be confused with The Walking Dead's Robert Kirkman. In a fun little connection to my other show, the Stephen King dissection series, Tarantino was brought in because John Esposito, who was originally supposed to write the script and who would go on to be co-producer here, had written the Graveyard Shift screenplay based on the short story in King's Night Shift collection, and was busy up in Maine shooting the film. David A. Goodman, an extremely prolific writer and president of the Writers Guild of America West, recommended Tarantino in Esposito's absence, and a $1,500 deal was struck. Well, $1,500 and get this, an agreement to do makeup and special effects on the forthcoming Reservoir Dogs. Got to give Tarantino credit, the dude knows how to plan ahead. But how did Goodman know about Tarantino? How was he able to recommend him? Good question. I tried to look into this and I couldn't really find where their connection was, except Goodman was also a writer on the Golden Girls. It all comes full circle back to the Golden Girls. Very odd. Another question though, why did From Dusk Till Dawn take so long to release? Well, it was rejected by pretty much every studio, and it wasn't until it caught the eye of Robert Rodriguez, who Tarantino had met while promoting Reservoir Dogs at the Toronto Film Festival, while Rodriguez was also talking up El Mariachi, starting a fairly long collaborative friendship, it seems at least. But with him behind the wheel, it seemed to be full steam ahead, which is great in my opinion, because there really is something special about From Dusk Till Dawn, which could be my own feelings about it, my own nostalgia about it, because I believe I saw this in theaters when it was released, which means that I was 10 when I watched this for the first time. Yeah, this had quite the effect on me, as you could probably imagine. But it also might be the fact that it's almost definitively Tarantino's best turn as an actor. He apparently lends himself quite well to narcissistic sociopaths with foot fetishes. But the film also gives us a powerfully understated Harvey Keitel and scene-stealing cameos from Salma Hayek, Cheech Marin, Tom Savini, Fred Williamson, and John Hawkes, not to mention Juliette Lewis in her second, and as of now, last Tarantino collaboration. It's just such a lovely B-movie. In fact, it's kind of two movies in one. The first half, this sort of gritty, nonstop dramatic escape to Mexico, and the second half, all about vampires. With, of course, the now classic Tarantino Salma Hayek toe suck for a bridge. And I honestly can't begin to tell you how hard I noped at all those bats, too. Nope. Don't like bats. No, thank you. But all of this, from True Romance to Natural Born Killers to From Dusk Till Dawn and even The Golden Girls, it was all just building Tarantino's prominence, building his reputation, building to Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's true directorial debut, which we will be going in depth on in the very next episode of the Drunk on Writing Tarantino Dissections. Until then, remember, if you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to the channel. Do whatever you need to do. And if you would like more videos more often, head on over to drunkonwriting.com and sign up, for where just $1 gets you so much more. It's unbelievable. It's a hell of a value. I mean, it's like better than McDonald's dollar menu, I gotta say. As always, until I see you again, cheers and keep on riding.